Hello. In this video I'm going to talk about storm and pseudo-storm and multi-spelling in Cube. Now I don't support storm. It's definitely a satisfying payoff if you know how to build around it and draft around it and letting it all come together. You can win the game in one fell swoop by casting 10 or even more cards in a single turn and then winning the game. But that's a little bit beyond the scope of this video, since I'm just going to be tackling the more modest payoffs for Storm. But before I get into that, I want to talk about one extra piece of, I guess, synergy or benefit to casting a bunch of spells, and that's that you get more cards in your graveyard. And these days, there are more and more cards that care about having stuff in their graveyard, so it's nice to get Threshold or Delve or Escape going. Plus maybe you support Delirium or any other number of things. So that's one nice little extra, cherry on top, I guess. But the main thing that enables you to multi-spell are free spells, rituals, or other things in that arena. I'm not going to go deep on these. I'm going to do a whole video talking about free spells, the different shapes they come in, and the different kinds of decks they can go in, besides acting as payoffs for the cards I'm going to talk about. So here's just a small sampling. We've got Snap, which can, essentially be a free cast, or even net you mana in certain cases. Pyrokinesis has an alternate free mode. Noxious Survival has Phyrexian mana, and Mishra's Bauble straight up costs 0. So again, I'm not going to get into these now, but there are a bevy of enablers for multi-spelling in a turn. So let's actually get into the heart of the video here. I would call these like your one-time payoffs. These reward you for multi-spelling on the turn you cast them. So just going left to right here, we have Sage of the Skies. And if you've cast at least one more spell before you cast this, you get another copy of them, and that's pretty strong, having 2/2/3 flying lifelinkers for 3 mana. Now white isn't the best at multi-spelling, because those types of effects typically live in blue and red, but as you'll see later when I release the other video, there are cards in any color that can act as free spells. Plus, you can build a deck that has white and blue and red, or some combination thereof. But anyway, moving on to Stormwing Entity, obviously in blue, so pretty easy to get this going, and a 3/3 flyer with prowess for 2 mana. That also has Scry 2. That's obviously pretty strong. A lot of people don't run this card. I think it flies a little under the radar, but I think I can go be right at home in any number of, legacy cubes, even unpowered vintage cubes like mine, or anything like that. And then Throsta, this one's a little less popular, but green does have plenty of ways to get free spells, or even cheap spells, 1 mana spells. You could play a mana dork, or crop rotation, which is actually a free spell after you get the mana back from it. And Throsta is a big threat. Notably, it has haste and trample, and you can't target if the turn it comes into play. As a side note, I generally like all my big green beaters to have trample. That way they can't be chumped block, especially if I'm going to try to double their power or buff their power some other way. Not that they need it, 7 damage is plenty. And then here are kind of your perpetual payoffs. These will reward you for multi-spelling, any turn you're able to do it. Again, we have another white card here, Cosmogrand Zenith. All you have to do is cast 1 more spell, and then you have 2 options. You can get 2 tokens, or you can get a counter on all your creatures. And as a 3 mana 2/4, that's a pretty good baseline. So I expect this one to stick around for a while. I just think it's pretty strong and goes well with what my cube's trying to do. Then we have Ledger Shredder. You're probably familiar with this one. Whenever anybody multi-spells, you get to Connive. And a 1/3 for 2 with flying is acceptable before you even get a Connive going. And not only does he grow, but obviously pitching things into your graveyard only adds extra value. So that one's pretty solid. I think everyone knows that one. Ashling, Flame Dancer. This one's a little less popular, but I do think most of the best free spells in Cube are in red, so this isn't the best color for it. And this one has all kinds of rewards for you if you can multi-spell, or even if you can only get 2 going in a turn, you can pyroclasm your whole enemy's board, plus do a little bit to their face. And if you get 3, you get 4 extra mana, and importantly, you keep all your mana, all your red mana at least. So I think Ashling's pretty strong. And then over here we have Eshki. Now, a lot of people don't run 3 color cards, so if they're not up your alley, then you can ignore them altogether. But if you do manage to cast a non-creature spell and a creature spell, you'll get a benefit only on your own turn. So notably, this isn't just multi-spelling on your turn. You have to do creature and non-creature. But what is nice is it triggers at the beginning of combat. So you could get a non-creature spell the same turn you cast her, and have a 6 mana trample that draws you a card, which is pretty strong for 4 mana. So these are all pretty strong perpetual payoffs. These aren't the only ones, just like these aren't the only ones that reward you for doing it once. This is just kind of what I run, but they come in all forms. And then here is kind of, these obviously aren't necessarily related to multi-spelling, but these are just kind of, paying you off anytime you cast a non-creature spell, or in the case of Young Pyromancer, only instants or sorceries. And, you'll find that most free spells are instants, sorceries, or, non-creatures. So these slot nicely into any type of deck that is multi-spelling as just kind of like a side payoff. I don't have to get too deep on all these. These are all pretty well known. Maybe Sedgemoor Witch is a little less played. But I kind of like having a card like Monastery Mentor or Sedgemoor Witch in colors that aren't typically thought to be like spell slinging colors, because it just makes the colors a little deeper. And it gives cards like Oust or Inquisition of Kozilek, and that makes them a little even more attractive than they would be. And then finally, just real quick, since you're multi-spelling and maybe exiling cards from your hand to make other cards free, you're going to be running out of gas, so it's good to have wheels. And wheels are good in a lot of decks, but they're especially at home in a deck where you're multi-spelling. Also, we have balance here. Maybe you won't be able to refill your hand, but if you're empty-handed, you can keep your opponent down as well. But this one's a little more niche and nuanced, so you're going to want to think more about that. But these are all kind of cube staples. Maybe Windfall isn't played as much. I like Windfall because it leaves the graveyards intact. A lot of blue wheels like Time Spiral or Echo of Eons or Time Twister, they empty the graveyard, which I don't know, kind of goes against what I'm looking for in my own environment, but there's plenty of them for you to choose from in your own. But that's really all I had today. I just wanted to kind of introduce these various types of payoffs and synergies that go with it. And again, I'll get a lot deeper on these types of cards in another video, just showing what kind of free spells exist and where they're best. But yeah, let me know if I missed anything or got anything wrong. Hopefully that didn't happen. But yeah, I'd love to hear any comments you have, and hopefully you liked the video, and I'll see you next time.